Hello, happy Sunday to you. It is that time of the week again when I'm back with some crafty ideas, hopefully to inspire you and get you playing in your art journal, your card making, whatever it is you enjoy doing. It's Sarah here from Funky Fossil, and hopefully you are already subscribed to my channel, and if you are, thank you so much for coming back to visit me again this week. If you're new here, thank you very much. It's great to have you, and it'd be lovely if you could like and subscribe to this video just so I can grow my channel with all the content that we already have and have already got to come. Right, I'm going to jump straight into it this week. The journal that I have on the table in front of me is a layout that I did, I think it was just a few days ago, and I added a kind of window into the journal page with a fantastic Buddha stencil on it. And of course then we've got a layout behind it which is visible through that window, so it gives you the opportunity to think about how you're going to place the elements on your second page in order to enhance the layer above it. And it got me thinking of different ways of using acetate and windows in our journals or on our cards, because I think they're a great way of adding a level of interaction, added depth and interest, and it gets you curious to see what sits behind the window as well. So I'm going to do a version of this page but also share some other ideas as well, because it's really easy and lots of fun to work with acetate in your journals. Now the acetate that I'm using is one that I just got off Amazon. It's Haber Crafts, but the key thing really is that it's quite a heavy duty one, so it's 240 micron, just so that it gives that kind of finished page a little, kind of some real integrity. And if you're going to use texture paste or other mediums on the acetate, it's going to stand up to that well. So this was a pack of, I think, 10 sheets, and I got it off, as I say, off Amazon, and it's worked really well for how I'm going to use it today. So I've got a few ideas, as I say, already about things that I want to just show you, and I'm just trying to think. Here's the first one I'm going to show you, because this is a really simple way of using acetate in your journals. Or again, this could be a card, it could be a card front. So I'm going to do some stenciling onto acetate with acrylic paint, and we can use that as just a flip layer on a page rather than creating a window through a page. So let's get on and do that first. As always, when I get started thinking about these things, I end up with more ideas than I will possibly have time to do in the course of one of our Sunday videos. So I'm going to try and get through a few today. So I've already cut a piece of the acetate. I think I've cut it to about 15 or 16 centimeters square, and I'm having a rummage. What I'm going to use is our new shape shifter stencil. So this is one, I think it was in last week's Sunday Maker Bundle. So check it out. I'll certainly put the link in the description box below for those of you that maybe haven't seen it before. But it's a lovely size, so really kind of retro vibes stencil, and we were using it last week with gel printing onto sticker paper and using these shapes to help us do collages. So it's great to see it being used in a different way as well. So yeah, do check out that Sunday Maker Bundle. Now, of course, my stencil is way bigger than the piece of acetate, and acetate has a real knack of being see-through, so I lose more acetate than I ever use. I'm just going to try and position my acetate so I get some patterning that I think works well, which won't really be very visible to you until we start putting the acrylic paint on. So I think that'll be interesting. It's a nice abstract stencil anyway, so it really isn't going to it's going to work whichever elements I capture on this. Probably the safest way, or the most sensible way to have done this, would have been to use the full A4 sheet of acetate, so I would then be able to work over the whole thing and then cut it down. So I've just made life a bit more difficult for myself as usual. I'm going to use some black acrylic paint here. I'm using some Deco Art because it's got a nice matte finish to it. And of course the trick when we're using acrylic paint on our stencils is to try and keep the, so I'm using a cosmetic sponge, but try and keep the amount of paint on your sponge to a minimum, kind of almost, as you see here, I'm dabbing it off because we don't want too much wet medium going over that stencil, particularly given this is going on to acetate, which in itself is quite a shiny surface. I'm just dabbing up and down, as you can see here. So I'm not pushing the paint around. I'm simply building the colour with an upward kind of tapping, up and down tapping motion. And of course you can just build the colour as you go. So don't feel you've got to get it all, the coverage right, all in the first application. It'll dry, because it's acrylic paint, it will dry super quickly. So get a first layer down, and then you can see where there may be spots that you that aren't as dense or as solid as you'd like, and you can go back to fill that in, or kind of add another layer of paint over the top. I'm not entirely sure where my acetate starts and ends. I think that bit's definitely on it. There it is. That's the end point. And of course there's lots of the great things you can then do on top of this acrylic paint once it's dried and you're happy with it. You can use your paint markers and doodle over the top. You can scratch into it, as you saw in that example that I showed you earlier. We might do that in a second if I've got something that I can use to scratch to hand. One of the things I've found when I'm using this kind of acetate and stenciling onto acetate to create a window or some kind of cover layer is it typically works better when you've got a fairly solid shape or image, so it doesn't get lost on whatever you put below. So if you're going to put pattern paper below or a kind of inky background, you don't want your window element to be so delicate that it kind of gets lost with what it's kind of sitting on top of. So I've personally found that I prefer it when I've got something a little bit more solid as my overlayer. I need a little bit more paint, I think. And of course, if I had got this down with tape and therefore could hinge it, I'd be able to lift the stencil and just check how much coverage I've got and whether I want to go in and add some more. So definitely make life easier and work with a slightly larger panel than the one that you're going to ultimately cut down. Tapping that off. Because while it's still wet, the paint, you can see if you go over it while it's still wet, you effectively kind of almost lift it again, so you do need to wait for it to dry to build a further layer, otherwise you just remove more paint than you're actually adding. The challenge now is knowing which bit is stencil, the actual aperture, and which bit is the actual mylar. So I have a feeling I'm probably painting the stencil as much as I am going through the apertures. So I'm kind of going back towards the top here where I know it's dry already. colour. I feel I might have a bit of bleed going on at the top there, and that's fine. One of the nice things with the paint on the acetate, as we were saying about scratching into it, is you can also scratch away. So if you do have a bit of bleed and you want to sharpen up your lines, you can always just kind of scratch that kind of excess away if you feel that would help. Right, I think that's as much as I'm going to put down. That bottom area is not quite dry, so it keeps lifting. So just leave it alone. So can you see? I'm just going to lift the acetate so you can see where the acetate is. How cool is that? So I've got a bit of bleed up here. Let's see, I've got a pokey tool. This probably works better normally with a kind of a kebab skewer or something like that. But you could certainly, well, actually wait for it to dry, otherwise you're just going to smear it around, aren't you? But when that is dry, we should be able to just tidy up those lines there. Because this is a fairly loose organic abstract, it's actually quite forgiving in that respect. And remember, this will go down over something else, so you can see how it looks slightly more mottled when I'm lifting it away from that white paper. When I put it against the white paper, that kind of coverage looks denser. So you're going to have this over the top of something, and so that colour will look more intense as a result. I'm just going to give this a second to dry, and then we can try a bit of scratching and mark making onto this before we put it onto over the top of a coloured or patterned background. So I'm just going to give that a few seconds, and I will be back so that we can work on top of it. So this is dry. It only took a couple of seconds to dry, and I already started scratching into it just to tidy up the edges. So here's a good example of an area where the paint has bled slightly, and I'm going to try and do this without getting my head into shot. You can see how easy it is just to bring the definition back to those shapes. So this is really easy to tidy up if you feel you've had any kind of bleed, because the paint comes off the acetate with just a little bit of scratching, almost like using a pencil. You don't want to use a lot of pressure. You're not trying to actually scratch the acetate itself. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. But as I was saying earlier, you could also scratch into the design itself, so to add a little bit of interest. For example, on this circle here, you could put some lines in. That's really fun to do, to break those shapes up. And of course, the more space you're creating for your with the lines that you add in, the more of the background will show through. So we could go, let's have kind of dots here. So just doodling really, but by removing paint rather than adding something. So your favourite mark making marks will work brilliantly. Let's see, where else shall we add something? So here we could do a could add circles here. I'm sure you get the idea. It's just quite addictive. So every time you're doing something like that, you're kind of taking paint away and making it a little bit more, making this overlay a little bit more see-through. I feel like I want to do one more. Let's do horizontal lines here. And a stencil like shapeshifter, you saw I've just taken a segment of it, but as we know from last week's kind of collage, there are loads of great shapes in there, so you can customize it. Really easily. And then, I haven't tried this, but I'm sure it would work. You could, of course, add marks in. So, here, for example, I've got a white gel pen, and you could be putting marks on top of the paint. It's not liking it too much. Started off well. If your marker doesn't like it, you can, of course, try a paint pen. There we go, it's back again. Or just white paint, or coloured paint. It doesn't need to be white. Obviously, just as long as it's showing up against the black, if that's what you've used. So, of course, now that mark is opaque because you've not taken anything away. You still can't see behind that, but you can see behind the circle marks you've made with the pokey tool. So, again, just different looks, or using both on the same overlay is going to give you a variety of effects. And I feel like I just want to do one more with the white pen, otherwise that would just be a bit lonely, won't it? Let's do something here. Let's just do another. Actually, I'll do a dotted line around here, or a dashed line. And of course, you can take as long as you want adding these details. And if you have a silhouette stencil and you're going to use that as your overlay image, you can imagine you can do lots of fab work into that silhouette. So you can see how we've already started to change up the look of this overlay with the scratching in and the doodling on top. I would normally go into my journal onto a painted background, but I was thinking I want to do a few techniques or different options in the video today. So I wanted a quick way of being able to add some interest behind our acetate. And so I've reached for my trusty mixed media compendium paper pads. Excuse me. And we currently actually have an amazing offer on the 8x8 paper pads in store, and so you buy one, you get the second free, so it's effectively half price if you're buying two. So definitely check that out in the website. I will put a link below, because this is definitely a paper pad that will work for so many different styles of projects. And you can audition your acetate over a variety of different pages to get a feel for what kind of look you like. So you've got your soft pastels there, almost like a landscape, and that still kind of really works behind these strong geometric shapes. A bit more of an abstract-y one, just with a kind of colours from the background. That one I think will be a little bit, it's nice, but I think it might be a bit too delicate. It might not really have much impact behind the stencil. This is one of my faves, and that really works nicely, but I'm going to use that in the next project, so I won't use it for this one. Then you could, of course, kind of go grungy, and the kind of the coppery tones and really glow behind it there. So effectively, from what I'm seeing here, I think this one would probably be too dark. I was going to say it would work with pretty much all of them, but one like this will probably be a bit dark. You're going to lose some of the definition where you've got those darker elements. So it's definitely worth trying the stencil out against a variety of different backgrounds if you're going to use pattern papers or something that you created yourself. And everything you put it over, it just looks really interesting. Again, too dark, I'd say. That one more, and then so that's the pale one we started with, isn't it? That one's nice, isn't it? You do lose a little bit of detail around here where the paper gets quite dark. Now the one I think I'm going to go with, because I've already cut it to size, is this yellow and pink one. And I did initially think that this band here, black and yellow, might be a bit too strong and we might lose some detail. So I'll have to have a look and see. Go this way. I still like it though with the black and yellow behind it. And of course I could lighten that band, couldn't I? In fact, I probably will do that. So we can put that on the page, but of course this layer can also be altered. So I could brayer over that with some white, add some white splatters, bring a little bit more kind of colour to this. But I like the fact it's got that kind of grungy style to it. So all I'm going to do to add this to my journal, and this is one of the easiest ways of adding kind of acetate without creating a window, is, I've got a page here that I can use this one, is if I attach these two elements, the under paper and the top layer, with some washi tape, and we can just stick that in, and it already looks like a really interesting journal page, doesn't it? So let me add those two, stick those two together, and then I'm going to use our fantastic typewriter roll washi tape, because it's nice 30mm, and it's black and white, so of course it has that neutral look to it, and will work great with the kind of graphic overlay we've got going on here. So I'm just going to put it on the top there and wrap it round. I've got way too, I don't know why I've just took so much off the roll then. So create it. So this is how, if you're going to use it in a card or as a card, then this would just be as much as you'd need to do really. You could then attach this to your card base, then you'd have that extra layer over the top, or even have it as the card itself. Given the acetate's 240 microns, it would be strong enough to stand on its own right. Now I will probably, I will add it into my journal, and I think that's going to look pretty cool. Let's say you could do some further work around it. In that earlier page I had done some scribbles and mark making behind it, just to kind of extend the design across the page, but I really quite like it in a really strong kind of black and white style. So really easy to do. Create your overlay and then attach it to your page with some washi to hide any joins without needing to use any glue. So that was my first option. The second one I want to do is using that same technique of the black acrylic over the acetate, but we're going to create a self-contained window on this page, as we did with, as I did in that Buddha page that set me off at the beginning of the week. So what I've done ahead of time is I've chosen one of the pages out of the Mixed Media Compendium, that gorgeous vibrant reds and oranges, cut it to size, stuck it to a page, and then cut a window out with a craft knife, so a metal rule and a craft knife. I then, in terms of the page below, you can see here it's also got a window, drew around that aperture and cut a further window of the same size in the same place, because that means when we put our acetate behind here, we can hide any workings, any glue, by attaching the back to that window. So this is going to be super quick because you've seen me already put black paint onto acetate, and I'm not going to do an awful lot more work on the page because we've done lots of inky backgrounds in the past, and I will obviously do more in future. So this is more about the window, and the fact that this mixed media paper's already got tons of texture and interest makes it a quick and easy way of working with the window and already creating quite a stunning page in the journal. So I'm going to get my acetate, stencil, etc. out, but I will just go over the Buddha design onto the acetate exactly as you just see me. So I will speed that up, and then we can see how it works in that window when I'm done. So we've stenciled our Buddha onto the acetate. It looks so cool, doesn't it? I absolutely love this stencil. So I've trimmed down the acetate to a smaller size, and I've chosen another piece of the mixed media compendium paper as the cover for the layer that will be visible below the window. And it's as simple as simply adhering our image into that aperture that we've created already with a craft knife and metal ruler, and just placing it in a way that you like in terms of what will be visible through the window. And you could adhere it to the front or the back panel. And this is a nice way then of ensuring that your glue doesn't show through. Because when we stick the two pages together, let me see, I think I like that. Can't quite get all of the image in, but that does the trick, I think. I can't remember what I was saying then. Yes, it's a nice way of ensuring that the glue won't be visible when you turn to the next page in your journal. You'll still see the Buddha, but you won't see the workings out. So let me just glue those pages together, and that will be done. And I won't spend time in the video today. I'm just putting some glue on this page so we can stick the two together. I won't spend time in today's video further decorating these pages, but I will, I'm sure, when I'm off camera, go back in and add some stenciling, some stamping, some further details, probably a word of some kind, to just create a little bit more visual interest. Just making sure that the two windows line up so you don't have any white showing where the second page is stuck down. So yeah, definitely, yeah, probably with some white, either white or black. There's some lovely space here for adding some stenciling detail in and further developing the theme. And again, on here, when I add further detail, I'll probably try and keep this area relatively clear, or if I do add anything, add something light, maybe in white, etc., so that it's not going to obscure the Buddha's face from the page before. So that looks really cool, doesn't it? So that's a slightly more in-depth way of embedding the acetate onto your page. Now I've got one more idea that I just want to share with you in today's video. So I'm just going to set up for that, and we're going to add a little bit now of more colour and texture to the acetate itself, so that the window almost has a bit more of a stained glass look to it. So I shall be back in a quick second once I've got my supplies together. Okay, so for our third way of using acetate in a kind of windows within our journal, I'm going to work with our lovely ebb and flow fish stencil, but I've added some alcohol ink to the back of the acetate, and I've used our Stella paste over the top of the acetate, which is why having something that's fairly durable, quite a good weight, really works for this. So what I want to do is have this effect of the fish swimming behind these kind of 3 circle apertures that are created on this piece of cardstock. I've just done a watercolour wash in blues on the cardstock with some white splatters. I think I'm going to do a little bit more to it before I actually stick everything down, but because I think it might look a little bit plain. Of course, I do have these circles that I have die cut out, so I could add some further interest or layers with those as well. So I'm going to play around with this one a little bit, but the key is the kind of the principle of having these circular windows within our journal, and how we can add that kind of colour and interest to the acetate itself, so it's no longer just a clear window that we're looking through. So say I've die cut 3 circles out of this piece of cardstock. I've then traced them on this piece of on this page within the journal. My cutting of the circles is not brilliant because of course I'm doing it from within the journal itself, so do forgive that, but most of it will be covered up, well, all of it will be covered up and not visible, but it will at least create those spaces that we can sandwich our acetate between. So that's me set up, and what I want to do now is just decorate the acetate. I'm not going to do a full sheet as we have here because I've already got this done and dried, but just to really show you how I got that effect. So alcohol inks on the background, this is the acetate on the paper here. I've got some felt on one of the kind of blending tools. I only have I only have the square felt, so I had to kind of trim it round to make it work as a circle. And I've got some blues and greens in the alcohol inks. I've got Laguna, Indigo, I've got a pearl one called Divine, and a kind of light green one called Pistachio. So obviously the pearl one has got a ball bearing in, it's got the mica at the bottom, so you want to give that one a good shake. And I'm sure you'll have seen acetate or acrylic paper decorated in this way with the alcohol inks. I'm just going to do a very, very simple technique. So I'm just going to dot a few of the colours, each of the colours, onto the felt, and just pounce it onto the acetate to create a kind of mottled abstract look. That's quite a lot of the Laguna. That's quite a dark blue, so we'll see what we get. One of the joys of alcohol inks is, of course, you can lift them really easily. So if the effect you get is too dark or too intense for your project, you can either use your blending solution or your 99% alcohol and just go in and lift that colour back out. But for this purpose of this bit of demonstration, it won't really matter because I've got one already done. Actually, it doesn't look like it's got too much blue on. You can see I'm twisting the blending tool as I go, just to mean it helps kind of distribute those colours a bit differently so it doesn't look like a repeating pattern. And you can go back in over yourself and you get those fabulous little cells. And then you just go continue on and add more dots of the colour to your felt until you cover the whole area. So can you see? It's lovely, and of course it looks really intense when it's against the white paper, but when you lift it up it's got quite a delicate look. It's ages since I have played with my alcohol inks. Maybe that's another rabbit hole for me to go down. I'm easily distracted. So, freshened that up, refreshed it. It's just not, you can't do this wrong, I don't think. This is just a really fun way of creating background and colour on your acetate. And I've seen lots of people do really amazing things with alcohol inks in terms of painting and more intentional designs, but can you see this is getting bluer over this side? Obviously put a bit too much of the darker colours now, but that will do the job for this. As I say, I could put a few dots of the blending solution or the kind of alcohol on here and go back over and start lifting some of that colour if I wanted to lighten it up. But as I say, it isn't as dark as you think when you lift it away from the white base. And this is gorgeous around the edge as well. Anyway, the other fabulous thing about alcohol inks for the impatient amongst us is they dry immediately. So I can get straight on with adding my stencil. Just putting the lids back on. So of course now to do my stenciling I want to turn over and work on the other side, and the transparency obviously will mean that that colour will shine through. And I do have Ebb and Flow here. So this is our Ebb and Flow stencil. So I have used this in several of our Sunday videos. So again, I will put a link to one of the Sunday Maker bundles that will have been included in the description box below. And I'm just got some, didn't clean it as well as I should have done. Got some paste on the back there. Right, again. Now I'm going to use our Silver Flash Stellar Paste because this has got a nice degree of opacity to it. It's quite dense, strong silver glitter. You could use the Starlight Paste. You could colour the Starlight Paste. Again, we did that recently. So you could customise it to be whatever colour you want. I just wanted something that was nice and strong against those blues. And I'm living dangerously by not taping the stencil down, but again, I'm not doing the whole of this panel because we already have one ready to go. This will take a little bit longer to dry on acetate, solely because of course the acetate is a non-porous surface, so it's not going to absorb any of the moisture from the paste. So just set it to one side. You might need a little bit longer for it to dry than you would normal kind of paper or cardstock. Not massively longer, but just be aware of that. And there we go. We'll lift that up. We've got fabulous dimension and shine that now works against the beautiful colours that we've put down behind. So it's really lovely kind of sea feel and effect to this, isn't there? So that's exactly how I got this effect. I just love seeing the alcohol inks over the top of each other. That's exactly how I got this effect on the slightly larger panel. And we will now, once I've got rid of the paste and clean my stencil, we will add it to the journal page to complete our window. So just take a few seconds to put this page together now. All I've done off camera is added a little bit of, I think it's Blueprint Sketch Distress Oxide to emphasize the apertures, add a bit of depth of colour around the edge of the page, and I think that gives it a little bit more impact. It was a bit wishy-washy just with the pale blues. I've done the same around these ropey hand-cut circles, just so that if any of that underlayer does show through, it's blue rather than white, so it won't be as visually distracting. You probably won't even notice it's there. So I've just added that to the journal page as a precaution. And it's as simple as obviously putting our dried acetate between the two layers, having them stack over each other. And I think to complete this page, what I've done with those die cut circles that we took out is I've used the ebb and flow, not the ebb and flow stencil, the shoreline stencil, which is these fantastic kind of bubbles. I've added them in that blueprint sketch around those die cuts. So I think I probably will just layer those up, maybe have one kind of coming off the edge here, just to give the page a little bit more depth and a sentiment in that bubble there, and that page will be done. Of course, once I've adhered everything down, and you'll need to really kind of have a bit more patience with adhering this, because of course this acetate has got the Stella paste on it, so it's got a little bit more dimension than just flat acetate. But you can see once you've got that all adhered, that will make a fantastic page in our journal with that extra interest. And because I've got colour behind the acetate, whatever you put on the next page won't be as affected, it won't affect this as much, but I probably would still be mindful of putting something down that was going to enhance what I've got on this layer. Right, so I hope you've enjoyed those ideas of ways of using, kind of creating windows or using acetate in your art journaling. We started with a simple overlay where we scratched into and doodled on top of the shapeshifter stencil. So that could be a card, or it could be a page that you'd adhere into your journal. We created this embedded window with our fabulous Buddha stencil, and then we just took that idea one step further by adding colour and some texture to our acetate, and then creating shaped apertures on the page rather than just the square or rectangle. So there's lots of ways you can go with this, and I'd love to see any ideas that you have. Please put them in the comments below if there's something you like doing with acetate in your journals or your cards that I haven't tried yet. I'd love to know. But I hope you've enjoyed these ideas. They've given you some inspiration for getting crafty and getting your stencils and your inks out and having a play. And thank you very much for spending time with me today. I hope you'll be back again next week when we'll have another video to share. But in the meantime, I hope you have a fabulous week, and thanks again for watching. Bye for now.